So, guys, I decided after some deep thinking that I do want to talk about my experience with the 48-hour film project again. And I do have to say that, my old YouTube channel got hacked into and I had to restart it. And, like for a while, I've kind of promised myself that I wouldn't talk about this again. But I do think that there's a couple of reasons, why I want to talk about my experience with the 48-hour film project. Number one is that, I did experience, racism, ableism, being taken advantage of, and a situation where it seemed like the blame was just put on me, really. And I do understand that, in life, one of the hardest things we have to accept is that sometimes there are situations where multiple people are accountable, but usually only one person goes down, or it may be multiple people on one side and one person, and that one person takes the fall, really. And that's not usually fair, but that's how life goes. And then also that no matter what we go through in life, there's always things to learn. We learn who we should trust and who we should not trust. We also learn that, if we don't listen to things closely, we end up being taken advantage of. And I think that the other thing I'm going to say with this video is that I want to keep people anonymous. So I'm going to work very hard just to do that. But I also feel that another reason why I want to do this video is that I've kind of decided that I think with the 48-hour film project, it really advertises itself as a competition for everybody, bring the whole family, bring everybody. But there's definitely a level of politics, and there's also a level of pushing certain people away. And then there's also really a level of, hidden agendas, really. So sometimes that could be pushing women, that could be pushing black people, that could be pushing, a certain group of filmmakers who bring in a big crowd. And as I said, definitely, people with power can be humble with it, and people with power can be disrespectful with it. So without further ado, I want to talk about what happened to me at the 40-hour film project. So what happened was that this takes place in 2025. So I did the 40-hour film project 16 times in a year because I wanted to grow my skills. And I actually thought, I was one of those people that thought that the 48 could lead you to Hollywood. So, what happened was that I did the 48 and for one city. And what happened was that the first thing that was said to me when I went into the meet and greets was, people were pointing at me and they're friends of the city producer, and they're all saying, one of them was saying, it was great that a black man is doing the competition this year. And I remember the city producer grinning at me and chuckling, and some of her friends were grinning at me and chuckling. And then the next thing that happened was that at the end of it, there was this woman that was an actress, and she was drunk at this event. She was like saying, this meet and greet, she was saying, why don't you want to work with me, Byron? Are you just a black man that wants to only work with other people? So, there's a few things from this that, again, it's my fault for not seeing a red flag. That obviously if you come into a place and people are talking about your skin color, that is a red flag. The next red flag was that I was telling the city producer how I've been doing a bunch of different 48 cities, and she was saying things like she is gonna talk to some people so some roads can be shut down where in the city so I can actually film my project. She was telling other people my plans and my goals. So that's another thing. There are some people, as I learned the hard way with this person, that you kind of see them talking about favors. And then the other thing that you see is that obviously this is somebody that will tell the town your plans and all that. So again, there's no dissection of red flags. And then the other thing too is that if people are making comments about your race, and then it starts with the city producer chuckling while a racist thing is being said to you, it could be something where maybe they're just saying, maybe they're trying to test me to be like, okay, am I just mentally ill or stupid that I don't know I'm being respected or disrespected? Can I be taken advantage of? And I felt that, I think as I go on with this journey, it was definitely a clear sense of ableism, which is you take advantage of somebody with mental health issues. And I think sometimes that could also even be in this situation of being manipulative or looking at me and being like, okay, he may be behind socially, he may be stupid. Some people were making comments about his race and he doesn't figure that out. So, what more can we say to him? What more can we do to test the waters to, disrespect this person? And I think that, some people may not know I was misdiagnosed with autism, that I was a very, very introverted person. I did not grow up with a lot of friends because what happened to me was that I found out that my biological mother was very abusive. And when I found out about that, I decided not to make friends or connect with people because I was afraid that I was going to be violent as her, or also just, just also maybe, have kids and those kids would have like her behavior. And I think the other thing too is that I moved around, over 10 times as a kid. So, I just felt so heartbroken moving all those times. And I remember my dad saying, we put Matt and Byron in with the luggage, made me feel like my parents just saw me as a piece of luggage almost. So I never really connected with people for those reasons. It was just always heartbreaking to be moved around, then find out that my biological mother was abusive. And then also my parents were not very sympathetic people. Like, their attitude with anything was like, okay, my biological mother was abusive. I don't want to celebrate my birthday. Oh, well, you're a dramatic kid. Shut up. Just have some cake and other things like that. Or, another thing too is that I did grow up. I was born in '87, so at that time there was a lot of senses of sacrifice. The family needs to move. The family moved. If you were those kids that, you saw in the movie, you decided to run away from home because you didn't want to move, you would be brought back home and you get spanked and maybe slapped in the face a couple of times and taught that you don't run the family. You have to make a sacrifice. Whereas nowadays, there's a lot of just, if a kid doesn't want, if the kid doesn't want to move in the family, especially the family, you may see an Eric Cartman situation where the family has to go to the whim of the kid, really. But in my generation, there wasn't a lot of that. But it's also important to explain some backstory just so people understand, why it's not good to take advantage of people. If people can understand that it comes from trauma and isolation and a lack of me being around social environment, maybe people could be like, maybe I should judge my own behavior because you shouldn't be taking advantage of people. So the next thing that happened, chapter 2, was I did the 48 for that city, and my film was crappy. I was still working on my skills. They showed my film in theaters, and I remember like somebody saying, and what, your titles are too big, what's going on, and it really sounded like the city producer. It really matched that person's voice, but I can't say if it was or not really. When they showed, and then what happened was there wasn't a lot of child actresses nominated, so they nominated my film just because they didn't have a lot of people that year. So my film ended up losing to a person who was on screen for less than 10 seconds, twiddling their thumb, saying the mandatory line and walking out. And then what happened was when they announced my film, the film at the award show, like the nominations, the state producer got on the microphone and said, whatever film Byron created. And then there were other people who were really shocked that this little girl won an award for saying one line, where my child actress did multiple lines. She was on screen for a long time. She got an emotional reaction from the audience, even though my film had very bad lighting, very bad audio, just a schizophrenic type of story. Where it's all over the place, because I was dealing with a lot of depression at that time and mental health issues, and a lot of my stories felt like a schizophrenic rant, and I don't mean to say that in a mean way, but it really felt like very philosophy and abstract thoughts and abstract rules in a story, so it didn't make a lot of sense really. So, what happened was this child's mother, she actually talked to me and said, she just thought that I should have won, and a few other people were just talking to me and saying, I should have won. And then I got mad, and then I said something like, it's an unfair competition, it's friends with the city producer, and the city producer heard me, and then she sent me an email saying, okay, the judges said your film was way too dark, nobody saw what happened. And it was a little controversial that she said that because a lot of people were talking to me after my film was shared, and some people were saying, wow, that's great uses of silhouette and whatever. So, and then she was also saying things like, we all know that the actresses can do a great job. I'm just saying. So I reported that to the president of the 48, and I didn't hear back from that person for over a year. And then I did share with that person, I'm growing, I'm learning my skills. I did more 48s, and I said that I actually won in Belgium. And this person was saying, wow, it really comes off like you won the whole competition. And, I've always had a great reputation. Nobody's ever complained to me, never. This is all in emails. And then she said, you know what, Byron, be careful who you screw in this film business. So that was the end of 2015. So there's a couple of things to say about this. That, first of all, that, obviously if you have a city producer that is disrespecting you, and if some of it's in emails, you should always report it. The next thing is that, I got mad and I talked about how unfair and professional that competition was on Facebook. So there's also that thing too of, sometimes, as I've learned the hard way, that, if you really have bad experience, sometimes you have to be careful with how you share it. And I think one thing with this video is at least I'm giving you some backstory and some accountability. So I was emotionally mature. And then also you got to dissect things, because as I said, I really felt like this city producer had no respect for me. And it was also an environment where maybe people wanted to upset me by saying that this little girl didn't deserve it. Even her parents were kind of putting that in subtext as well, really. But it was just not great. And then there were a few other things. I was also told that this little girl's stepfather was one of the judges. And I was also, the city producer did say something like that. With the way the 40-hour film project works, is that the whole competition in America. I'm like, when you go to the Cannes Film Festival, there's like 10 slots. So what happens is that the U.S. gets 1 or 2 slots, and that means so it's one against. So instead of one state against 50 states, she said that she talked to Mark Rupert and said, we're going to turn New England into its own district. So if you win this competition, if you win it for New England, you have a 1 in 13 chance of making it to the Cannes Film Festival, because she knew how to play politics with Mark Rupert. So again, if somebody's getting on a microphone saying that they're playing favorites with the president of the competition, and that's the winning film to go on to Cannes, that, first of all, that's very unprofessional, but it also is kind of like, I think what we were seeing from this person, the city producer, was really that, it is somebody that's trying to say, appreciate me because of all the favors and all the things that I can do for people. And then I think the other thing was, through those emails, it kind of said that maybe, and I hate using the word, maybe some borderline personality disorder type of thing, where she was really just, angry with me, gaslighting, and other things like that. And I think that one thing was lost in translation, or this person will not accept, is, with me, yes, winning and losing meant something, and I will admit that. But the other issue was disrespect. And I think that what I should have done at that time in 2015 was I should have said, Mark Rupert, president of the 40-hour film project, I didn't have a good experience with my city producer and this film project. And going forward, I will not do this city because I don't feel comfortable with the city producer. But it's important for you to know that, many people were saying that, one of the judges was actually a child actress's parent. Another thing was that when my film was shown, somebody was criticizing my film while I was in theaters, and it sounded like the city producer. The city producer had some snippy emails. I'll attach it to you. I also want to mention that the city producer's friends, and I'll mention the names of those people, were saying things that it was great that a black man is doing the competition. At the meet and greet, there was an actress that said to me, Byron, why don't you want to work with me? Are you just a black man who wants to work with other black people? And I would also just say on top of that, really, that that comment the city producer made about saying that, okay, well, she's dividing. She talked to you about how you're going to make the New England cities get a certain advantage. And I just want to say that I don't feel comfortable. I do not feel like that the city producer is professional. I think it's just a click, and I also just think that, you know, I'm also, as a person of color, don't want to be looked at as a token black man, or I'm just a black I'm just a black African creature that shows up, and I'm actually mixed race, so that's very offensive. You know, that's very, very offensive. You know, it's almost like saying, all white people. I'm on vacation in South Dakota. There's a lot of German immigrants that came here. So should I say every white person in South Dakota is a German, or should I say that every white person is Irish, or every white person from Boston is an Irishman? Like we shouldn't stereotype people based on how they look. So I think if I kind of laid out that point, that would be good. And then also I'll see what happens. I sent that to him in August, but he never ever got back to me. But he did send me a message a few months later saying that he's happy that I did 1648s in a year, and I'm really using to grow and challenge myself. So, that was also another red flag as well, really. I'm just about saying, okay, I did talk about some issues, but it really felt like, this city producer just gaslighted and said that, no, the issue is the reason why you're giving me a personal attack because you didn't win, when it was really disrespect. It was really just examples of disrespect and examples of filmmaking politics. And then I made another dumb choice. Chapter 3. So I did the 48 in 2016, and I did a couple of films. And I think every couple of months I did share with the city producer that I had an issue with, that I want to do a competition again. I'm learning these skills. I'm learning to be humble. And I'm very heartbroken that I hurt her feelings. And I really felt that way. I felt really just sad and ashamed that I really hurt her feelings, because it really felt like, that she was, devastated or angry and sad. Like I got that tone from her when I just informed her that I won for the Antwerp, Belgium competition, a few awards. And then she sent me back, no one's hurt my reputation and other things like that. But, there's also a lesson in, just not feeling so hurt whenever you made a mistake. And actually my biological father and a couple of my biological relatives have that in their genetics. There's a genetic, disposition. There's genetic disadvantages that I have. And one of them is just being overly shamed. I mean, overly, just... overly apologetic and just overly, dismayed when we hurt people. Maybe over empathy. And then I also think the other thing that I have is a lot of mental health issues. And then this leads me to 2016, is that I did her city on Facebook. She said, she's happy to have me back. It's really, really awesome. And then she sent me an email saying, I hope you don't go to Mark Rupert and say you should have won the whole competition. I hope you learned winning isn't everything. And I felt very shocked and stunned, and also extremely angry, because I felt very disrespected and I really felt gaslighted. And then the other thing was that I sent her an email asking her about special effects, and she said, well, are you cheating? Are you, Byron? Because it sounds like you're making a film beforehand because you're asking me this question. And one thing that I'll share is that the year before, there was a film that won Best Special Effects, and what happened was the person went on stage and said that he cheated and he used copyrighted footage, and he wanted to give the award to the second place winner, the person who got the second place for special effects. No, but that person's friends with the city producer, so he still is accredited for winning the special effect award, even when he wanted to dethrone it. And that's an example of double standards. So this guy confesses to cheating, but I'm asking a question about special effects, and automatically you're throwing the cheating card. And then what happened was I made a film that weekend, but I did feel really angry from what the city producer said to me. And then the other thing that happened was that I did a film about a person who was on a spaceship, and what happens is that he tells his daughters that he's going to die because he's getting sucked into a supermassive black hole. He has a phone conversation with his daughters saying that he's going to die in space, and they had to cope with the fact that both of them were going to have to raise each other. So, very emotional story. But what happened was that the story was based on something that happened to me. That in 2010, I worked at a store called Conway. It was robbed by its own security guards, and when the store was robbed, the police were aiming guns at me, and I had PTSD. And also my manager, there was a lot of workplace bullying. Like the first day of work that I worked there, I vomited in the middle of the road because of all the stress and bullying and undermining that I went through. And my boss would have me sit in a chair. He would stand above me and yell and scream in my face. He would make fun of the fact that I was almost murdered by the police. I struggled with suicidal thoughts for almost 10 years. And I just was really, really traumatized, and I was really angry. I also worked at Southern Connecticut State University, and I've told that story. I had a coworker who would come into work drunk and expose himself, pee by dumpsters, also dance in classrooms, speak in different voices. I told him to stop taking advantage of me, and I'm sick and tired of the bosses at Southern making me work in a group to do his work, and then he flipped out, almost assaulted me. They did nothing about it. And also during this time, my father just only cared about me advancing my career, and my therapist only cared about me advancing my career. And it was always that mentality of whenever I deal with workplace bullying, almost being murdered in the workplace, trauma, and disrespect and racism and other things, my therapist would be doing the world's smallest violin gesture and telling me to work hard. And he would also say things like, you can do more than being another black man going to jail and other things like that. And even my father was like, saying, okay, you're lazy. Even though you did 1648s in a year and you want to be this big filmmaker, you're lazy because you don't move out of your brother's place. I lived with a brother that had mental health issues, and he would walk around naked. He had a lot of very sexually inappropriate behavior. He had a rule when I first moved in of nobody masturbates in this house. And also, he would walk around naked with erections. And again, I told some of this to my parents, and they didn't really care. They only cared about me moving out and having a better life and saying that your brother has a lifestyle of a loser. My counselor was saying, okay, because you don't move out, you don't get a house, you're never going to attract a woman, and other things like that. Like you're a loser because you live with your brother. And then the other side of it was, my counselor and my father, but most of my counselor, he wanted me to be this token black man, supposed to forget my trauma, settle down, get a nice place, get a nice car, just like the movies. You have those big eyes while you're looking at a girl with a car, and then you date the girl, and then you start a family. And even though this is like a little like gaslighting, but he was also really into me being this proud black man. So I've always said to myself, he probably wants me to just find the most darkest skinned African girl and have a bunch of black kids, and I'll be like the Jackson 5. I'll be like Joe Jackson, having my 5 black children, have a big black family, and accept that I'm a black man when I'm actually mixed race. So bury my trauma by starting a family, bury my trauma by focusing on my goals and my successes, and never really get to the root of it. And I used filmmaking as a way for me to overcome my trauma and my grief and other things like that. But what happened was another bomb hit me, which was that my father, I'll use his name, Kevin Lembo, was running for governor of Connecticut. And he decided to do a campaign. In this campaign, he mentioned that me and my brothers were all black children. I'm mixed race. My older brother's mixed race. And he mentioned that we all have autism. And he had like our baby pictures and other things like that. And he was kind of grinning and winking and jittering his head. And I felt very hurt and sad because I felt like no matter where I go, my father was only going to see me for my race, and he was also only going to see me as being this African American kid. Like he just couldn't like get that out of his head, really. He does kind of come off like you see the episode of South Park where Randy invites Token's family over. He wants Integrity Farm to appeal to people, to appeal to black people. So he takes photos with Token's family just to be like, okay, you know what, black people like Integrity Farms and all that. And Token's dad figures out, okay, you don't care about my ideas. You just care about being this white man that wants to celebrate the fact that you work with black people to market it. You want to tokenize black people. You want to commercialize black people. And that's really how it felt, really, And I felt very, very hurt, and I felt very angry from having so much trauma and PTSD, and told to suck it up and get over it. Also, my counselor says it looks like the people with the 48, they're trying to upset you. They're trying to put you in a trap. My brother's sexually inappropriate behavior, working at a job, Southern Connecticut State University, where I changed my shift because I was dealing with a lot of bullying and harassment on third shift, and they also wanted to do the same thing. Like the guy who I had to work with, who was causing all these problems, he wanted to get me angry, so he could be like, okay, well, see, Byron's a bad guy when actually I'm an exceptional worker. So all that anger, and then also the trauma for almost being murdered by the police and dealing with a boss that would bully me and no consequences, and taught the best way to solve your issue with your boss from Conway is just to forget it, work hard, or not even file a complaint with the police. And the Hamden Police Department, when they almost murdered me and they were saying racist things towards Calvin, who robbed the store. They were saying things like, what was Calvin doing? Was he chilling with his niggas? Was he smoking a blunt and other things like that? So always taught, that thing about, my feelings don't matter, and other people's, but how I treat other people does matter. And then I also grew up with a lot of emotional maturity. So when I was on stage at this 48-hour film project, I almost said the name of it, knew something. But what happened was that a person asked questions, and one of the questions was, a little bit about yourself. And I mentioned that I've done it for the Singapore competition, I've done it for Belgium, I've done it for all these places. And, I think, and I remember, the attitude many people had when I said that was just, hurry up, Byron, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. We don't give a shit about what you've done for this competition. And I struggled from a lot of insecurities. And then they asked another question. And one of the questions was, what inspires your film? So I mentioned that I'm inspired by Dostoevsky and a couple other writers. And I said to myself, that in my brain, I recalled what my father said about me being autistic, and maybe I said to myself, and I got insecure, so I said to myself in my brain, maybe everyone thinks I have Asperger's syndrome. I want to show everybody that I'm a really hurting person, and I'm trying to persevere all this pain. So I mentioned that I struggled with suicidal thoughts, and I said that I was kind of very masochistic with my suicidal thoughts. I said that in a therapy session, I was thinking, I told him that I had a therapy session, and in my therapy session, I was telling my counselor that I want to go take a chainsaw and cut off my legs and cut off my arms and cut off other parts of my body. I'm sick and tired of being used by people and taken advantage of. And I also said that, someone like my counselor was just joking, saying, don't cut off your arm first or your hand first, because you're going to have a stump. You're not going to be able to use a chainsaw for other parts of your body. I also said something like, that, one of my favorite films is The Deer Hunter with Christopher Walken. I really emphasized with that character is my mirror. In my anger, I really, I lied and said that I put a gun to my head, because, it was almost like mental health issues, where it's almost like your imagination and your emotions are making you lie. But the whole thing about the chainsaw and going to Home Depot and picturing chainsaws and other, tools to destroy property I would use on my body and stuff like that. And I kept on going and going, because it was almost like what I've been taught my entire life, which was emotional repression, never emotional management, never anger management. It all ended when the guy just got sick of it. He jumped up from his seat and he was screaming at the top of the lungs, like, hey, can you please stop talking? And then I kind of said, I'm using the 48 to turn my life around. And then some people applauded me, but a lot of people walked out. And I felt very hurt and very sad that I kind of that my anger got the best of me. And then the city producer, it was a couple of things. I think the first thing that I mentioned was that I almost got arrested. And when I said this, the city producer was just looking at a couple of people, moving their head back and forth, looking at people left and right, and then looking at me and grinning. Then the city producer was also looking at some of her friends and just sneering and chuckling, like she wanted to burst out laughing at me. And then also when I went on and on and on about suicide, it was a little disturbing, because then she kind of gasped and put her hand on her head and she said, Jesus Christ. And I think one of the reasons why she did that was because, saying that you almost got arrested is a big deal. But saying that you struggle with suicide and trauma and PTSD from workplace bullying, workplace violence, and a boss that almost laughs at you for almost getting killed, I almost got sympathy from the audience without making that my intention. My intention was just to get the anger out of my system. I think another character that I've emphasized with through the issues when I've had mental health issues is Eric Draven from The Crow. Just like how his wrath comes from all the hurt that he felt, really. And I felt the same way, almost a little bit like Eric Draven, just trying to get all the wrath and the anger out of my system, really. But, a state producer was just playing on her phone, making sarcastic gasping sounds, and and then also was bad too because there was a lot of like little kids, so a lot of parents grabbed their babies and their young children. They kind of just ran out of the room, really, almost like, and I totally got that, really, and I totally got that, it was really messed up. And I also didn't tell the audience this, but I was going to tell them that one thing I told my psychiatrist was after I watched The Silence of the Lambs, Hannibal Lecter, I liked how he emotionally abused people because I dealt with so much emotional abuse and manipulation and bullying and racism and backstabbing from my film community that, I wish I could be like Hannibal Lecter, like the ultimate cannibal of human emotions. I wish I could be that level of a psychopath or a sociopath because it seemed like to me that all the hurtful people, all the disrespectful people, all the manipulative and conniving people in this city just know how to upset me. So I can go from what people said that, even though I wasn't skilled, if I had a good mentor, I would be really far ahead. So I went from this, filmmaker that had a future to destroying my future. And then I also was saying too, that personal sabotage, that, like, as I said many times with the 48, is that you're going to have some toxic film communities. And sometimes the mentality is thin the herd, upset the guy who has potential. If somebody's gifted, treat them like crap, really. So I kind of did that, but it was also a suicide attempt for me because I really felt that, because my father put out there that I had mental health issues, that I could never ever be a filmmaker. People are going to see me as the Rain Man filmmaker. And I kind of said, like, you know what? I don't want to be looked at as dumb and mentally ill. I want people to look at me as hurting and almost a bit intimidated because at the time I felt intimidation was a way of power. But I really felt very hurt from it, and I think, and the other thing that happened was, after this is all over and I said, I'll use the 40 to turn my life around. And I'm trying to all the pain, all the hurt that I feel and make films. Like, I did get applauded. The guy who yelled and screamed at me, he was actually winking and grinning at me. And what happened was I went to the store. The Conway store was closed. It was shut down a few years before this event. And it was almost like I was crying in my head, but I wasn't crying for real. I actually thought about suicide and running into traffic and killing myself. And it was also weird, too, because I looked at my hands and I just saw claws like a dragon almost. And I kind of said, like, I am turning into a monster. Every bad person in my life wins. The guy, my old boss, for making me hold on to so much anger and rage and putting that on my body through laughing at me for almost getting shot at his job because he hired unprofessional people and he also bullied those people and they got to a point where they just responded. And then being antagonized by this city producer and other things like that. It all just, made me feel like, other bad people are winning, but good people are being punished. And then after that, from 2016, all the way to, from 2016, all the way to 2022, I had PTSD from this. I could not go a day without thinking about what happened to me at the event, having pressure in my chest, having pressure in my heart, waking up angry, and just really hating this city producer because I felt like she was one of the people that antagonized me. So I think, like, over time I've talked a little bit about the competition. I really just hated the 48 the same way I hated my old job. I almost became the Jim Cornette of the 48-hour film project. And I also had a high anxiety of being a filmmaker because what happened was that I just was like, I don't want to learn these skills. I don't want people to use or hurt me or take advantage of me. So that was that for all those years. I will have to add in 2017, I did the competition again. I helped out a team, and I was being taken advantage by another filmmaker. When I went back to that city again, I remember sitting in the audience, and while I was being applauded for the editing, because I said, like, I don't. What happened was that I did a project in 2017 where I edited for one of my friends, and then what happened was my friend asked me if I wanted to go up on stage and say, I edited this project and be like recognized on stage for the job that I did. But then I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. And then I sent a letter to the city producer a few nights before and saying that, my friends may invite me on stage, but I'm not going to do that because I want to atone. I took a moment away from everybody on stage last year, so that way I can understand how it feels when I do something exceptional and it's taken away from me the same way other people did something exceptional in 2016. So I remember, like, when I was sitting in the audience and he was talking about my editing, the city producers were just like putting their hands on their mouth and pointing at me and just like chuckling. And also one of my former friends, he did a project where he was helping this little girl. And he said like things like, fuck the 48, I hate the 48, I wet my ass with that competition. This competition's fucking stupid because they had the fucking award show and they had the fucking like showings in the middle of the week. Who the fuck does that? And he took some of my ideas, like working with this girl and other things like that, and he kind of made a film, and he was like, kissing the butt of the 48 and posing for the camera and smiling. Or when people were talking about the work that I did, he was just like smiling and grinning like the Cheshire Cat. And then also he got a project where I worked with him 9 months in Wallingford, Connecticut. And at the very end of the project, he says people use it more than you think. So he and his other friend were grinning like the Cheshire Cat. And it really made that tradition of, my role in the New Haven film community, and other film communities and New London film communities and other places that I travel to and go to, or Wallingford or Bridgeport or other places, is that, my role is to be the village idiot, like the hardworking village idiot that people take advantage of, that people don't get to know and understand. And then the other thing was that, during those 6 or 7 years, I thought about suicide and depression. There was a girl in my life that I wanted to marry, didn't work out. I had a lot of mental health issues, and my counselor was helpful. He only taught me accountability, but no emotional management, which I really needed. So, for those 6 years, from 2016 to 2022, I traveled and did 48s in other cities because I said to myself, what? I wish I was dead. I want to feel like I'm dead, so I'm going to get out and travel and go to all those other places. And once again, I think I got a letter from Mark Rupert, the president of the 48, and he was kind of commending me for traveling, doing all a bunch of that stuff, but he never really got back to me about my issue with the city producer. So in 2022, I reached out to the city producer a few times. I've done that over the years, and she finally cracked and said, then I got a letter from Mark, and he did say something like, he put me in a probationary period. He understands my issues, and he also said something along the lines of, what what you did was hurtful, and a couple other things. And he put me on a probationary period, which meant that I can't do the city where the city producer is doing it, and I'm on probation for further notice. Every single time I do the 40, I have to let him know what I'm doing. And then the city producer reached out to me and said, I think your overall issue is how we disagree with awards. The other thing that happened was she said that I was banned for the entire year. And then the other thing that happened was I was volunteering at another 48. She found out about it and told that city producer that I was actually banned for the entire year. And then this city producer, who I was volunteering for, says, if you show up at this event, I did not know that you were banned, but if you show up to the next event, I will call the cops and I will put a trespassing warrant on you. I explained the situation to Mark, and he said that what happened is that, yes, you are on a probationary period. That's the decision. You're banned from the city that the city producer you've been talking about you're banned from that city, but also you can go anywhere you want and do the 48, but you have to let me know. So that existed for 2 years. I let Mark know. I think maybe I sent him like 200 messages because I kind of, it was almost like a therapy thing, and I had to kind of learn a couple of things, about how, as I said, the overall lesson, which is I had to learn, is that even though it was very clear that there was a bunch of problems and a bunch of unprofessionalism, there's a side of personal accountability. When you talk badly about somebody for such a long time, it becomes harassment. The next thing is that there are organizations that are not going to care about one person. They're going to care about the one person that's making the money and whatever, really. So it was very unfortunate that that happened. And I also think the other thing too was that it really hurt me that this person would not take accountability. Then I've had to learn, the definition of an asshole is somebody who goes through life and just hurts other people and don't take accountability. And the person that I had an issue with said, like, deep down in their heart of hearts, they think the big issue is that I just struggle with is that I just am a sore loser. I just disagree with how they pick awards. When I've said it, and just reiterate, ableism, like being manipulative, and ultimately thinking that people can disrespect me to my face by talking about my race, and teasing me and taunting me in public. One of her friends mentioning that, saying some comments about me being black, and then grinning along with that. And then the other thing too is that the evidential double standards, because if it took Mark 6 or 7 years to address this issue, when this person just had enough of it and he sells that in the afternoon, it talks about real double standards, and that's not good, really. But I've learned over time, even though I was very, very angry at that event, even though, yes, the trauma that I've had from multiple people hurt me, antagonization from the 48 hurt me, and other things have hurt me, in the end of the day, I'm responsible for how I respond to other people upsetting me. Like, I work in a psychiatric ward. There's plenty of kids who get mad or throw shit or destroy things because they find out they're going to be there a little bit longer. I remember one time that there was a kid that had behavioral issues, and they put him in a room, and what happened was the nurses were like making faces and teasing him, so he was throwing chairs at the door and other things like that. So I've learned through working in the psych ward, ultimately you have to learn how to control your emotions, and there will be other people that are going to push your buttons. And then, as I said, that the other big thing, and I think the thing to share with all you, is that it doesn't feel like justice has been done for me. It really feels like that it's, as I said, I think that it really feels like it's easier to punish me than it's easier to punish the other person, really. And the other thing too was that this person stepped down from doing the 48 because they got themselves involved in a very serious controversy, that they worked for city council in one of the states that they worked in, and they would do marriage licenses for people, but there was a pattern of this person reporting Hispanic people and getting them in trouble with the law, like saying, okay, they're legal immigrants, or and there are other things in the article, if I remember, saying, like, they would say things to the feds like happy hunting on this person, that when their last day of work, they're saying things like, I did nothing wrong, and kind of just making a big spectacle of themselves. And then there's some pictures of this person, when they're being interviewed by there's some photos of this person. I'm not sure when those pictures were taken, but they're kind of like smiling for the cameras and acting like proud of themselves. So there are people like that. And unfortunately, especially in filmmaking, where it's very ego-driven and, it's about people wanting to get their people to the top, there will be people like that in there who, in my opinion, there is a narcissism disorder, there's a vindictive disorder with this person, there is a sociopathy, maybe psychopathy, maybe born this way, but there is a sociopathic issue with this person. And then also this person just understanding how certain things work and how certain organizations and certain people work, and just knowing how to just, manipulate and hurt others. And that's not right, but we live in a world of people like that. But it was very unfortunate that, for a very long time, I've struggled psychologically because of this person. I also struggled psychologically because the attitude was always, put the blame on Byron instead of actually mutual accountability. And then the other thing is that, it was a situation where, as I've said, every single time I talked to Mark, he said nothing about anything that happened to me that was racial, and there was clearly some racial stuff. But the point of it is, and I think the lessons of this is that, like my friend told me, I should have just let it go 6 or 7 years ago, not done the 48, avoid that situation. I think the other lesson is that, if the 48 wants to be a competition that is for everybody, obviously, they have to be for everybody. But also the other thing too is that I've learned the hard way that I've had a pattern in my life of holding in all my emotions and not having emotional maturity, and then I blow up. Like I remember in high school, when in middle school, I was told about my biological mother and how abusive she was. I dealt with bullying through my life. I was abused by my camp counselors, and then in high school, I remember like people shared. There's a speech where people shared their emotions. I blew up on stage and I caused a bunch of problems for myself, and I suffered from depression for 3 or 4 years because of the response to my blow up and the insensitivity. And in 2016 all the way to 2024, I've suffered psychologically from this, almost as I said, it's a lot less now, but I think I have a lot more emotional intelligence on how to process and analyze it. And I think that the last part of it is a couple of things, So from my experience, do I think the 40 Hour Film Project is a competition that people should do? I would say the answer would be no, because honestly, there may be other state producers who have this type of hurting other people agenda. And then, as I said, if I'm talking about an issue and they don't address it or ignore it for 6 or 7 years, it shows a level of disrespect that they have for filmmakers. I also will say that, should I have been banned or should they have put in charges on me? I would say that honestly, if you're talking badly about somebody for a couple of years, I think there should have been earlier intervention. But since I've already kind of have done one video, but now I'm doing the second video, I do think that, if they want to react, they should just like say, okay, since you can't let it go, even though it's traumatic or whatever, you just can't come back really. But also, unfortunately, it does fall into harassment when you keep talking badly about somebody. That becomes defamation of character. I can't prove these things, even though these things that happen. There's thoughts about how this could be slander, but I just think that, I do want to heal myself. And I do feel like, I appreciate Mark. He's a really nice guy. He's really caring. He's very supportive. But he may be like Tony Khan in AEW, where he tries to be people's friends too much. He has an empire to run, really. So sometimes, it's just too much to handle everything. And sometimes, as we know, that if there's somebody making you money and they're a problem, sometimes people will keep that person because they're a cash cow, really, even though they're making it bad experiences for other people. Filmmaking is very political. But I also think that the importance of it is, as we all know, that sometimes when you keep somebody who is problematic, there may be a deeper, darker issue with that person. And that's kind of what happened. This person had to leave because if people connected the dots, that this person was also somebody who's been on the news, and it looks like that they may be prejudiced against Hispanics or prejudiced against minorities, you got to get rid of that person. But as I said, it's part of politics. It's just leaving before the drama arises and all that stuff, really. And I think to this person that caused me a lot of pain, I'll just say that, it's really unfortunate that they don't have a psychology to take personal accountability, that, they're very hurtful people. And I'm not sure, what happened to them. Maybe they've been in situations where they got screwed over or taken advantage of, or maybe they feel a sense of power, or they just like getting off on hurting people and thinking that they're intelligent, but that's not a sign of intelligence. And also the other thing too is that, you mess with the wrong person, because I really was trying to tell everybody that this whole situation of me being played as a fool, I'm not going to tolerate anymore. I'm going to be treated with respect. And what would have happened if somebody, took it worse? What would have happened if the people that you, anybody that you bother came back and just tried to get revenge with you? And I don't want to have that. I just want to say the 48 advertised itself as a competition for everybody, and it's not really lived up to that. When I dealt with racial stuff and other things like that, that's not been dealt with, and that's not right. But it's important to put the information out there to prevent people from, getting hurt again, really. And it doesn't mean the competition should go away. They should just be a little bit more mindful of who they bring in. And if there are any serious complaints about somebody, even if they make the money, there could be a bigger problem if you ignore these people. Because, like I said, that could have, the city that I could have done could have just had no more 48s, or that could have led to a big boycott, or even like with what I've been through. I've done videos. What would happen if a video like this got 100,000 views and people say boycott the 48? So don't avoid problems, and everybody needs to take accountability for their side. I've taken accountability for my emotionally mature behavior. I've taken accountability for harassing this person online by just talking badly about them, and they've not taken responsibility for harassing me back or their conduct. But that's why these videos exist. It's not to hurt this person, but it's to say that in an organization that says for everybody, it's not really for everybody. And it hurts me inside that I really think that I do not want to continue a pattern of being the black guy in my film community, or being the black guy who gets taken advantage of and disrespected. Because that's why I've held myself back as a filmmaker, because I do not want to be looked as the black guy and the mentally ill guy that can be disrespected when I'm actually multiracial, and I may be behind socially because of trauma and abuse and other things that have happened, and growing up in an environment of emotional immaturity and seeing bad examples of people with emotionally immature behavior. So, that's also one of the reasons why I don't disrespect people, because sometimes they may be a little off or awkward. There may be a backstory to that. So respect to everybody. This is not anti-48. This is anti-48 being unprofessional. And I wish everybody have a great day. This is not to defamate anybody. This is not to hurt anybody. This is not to hurt the competition. It's to say, to point out a problem and make sure it's dealt with seriously, and everybody's treated respectfully. The film community needs to bring everybody together. As they say in South Park, if one person doesn't want to come and be the best version of themselves, we all lose. And like I said in my prior video, that with the 48, you can look at the newspapers, you can see all the winners, you can see the smiley faces and being inspired to do it. But if there is a dark side of other people being pushed away, or other people being sabotaged, or other people being bullied or pushed away, then their light has to come to that, because everybody needs to be treated fairly.